All right. We got 3 categories here for you, Jack, and I'll start this one off because I know I put you on the spot right before we started here. Category number 1, all Louisville wants for Christmas. And I will go first. I don't think I'm going to be stealing your answer to this, so I'll just go first. So I've talked about this with Mike Rutherford. I've talked about this with a couple other like Louisville and actually some other non-Louisville people who have seen them play a few times. Chris Mack putting on a lab coat and a scientist, some goggles and coming up with a formula to make a combination of 2 players. Jared West and L. Ellis, put them together. You get Jared West, leadership, decision-making, the on-ball defense, all the things that people are raving about. He's a good passer with L. Ellis's explosive athleticism and his ability to get into the lane, break down defenders, score. Combine those 2 guys because otherwise you have to play them sometimes together or play them one off of each other, and it's not quite the same. Louisville is just really missing that singular dynamic guard. And it's painfully obvious on both ends of the floor. But if Chris Mack could come up with some sort of great scientific experiment where that could be wrapped up into one player, you wrap them up, put a bow on them, put them under the tree, and you have them ready for the Wake Forest game, I think they'd be happy.
I think that would be perfect because that's exactly the type of guy they need. And unfortunately, college basketball, there is a sort of free agency these days. There's no trade deadline.
That is disappointing. I do like the trade
deadline. But I'm going to go a little bit of a different route.
Okay.
And it's a weird one, but I think it's one worth saying. I think all Louisville wants for Christmas is an IARP ruling.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
That's
and
fair.
I say that on a couple of fronts. Number one, it's now 2021, almost 2022. The
5
FBI
years.
stuff broke in September of 2017.
Yep.
Can we please just get the punishment and just know what Louisville has to face and just move on?
Yep.
I mean, that's not a new take. But number two, NC State got their ruling on Monday from the IRP. The IRP finally did something, and they made a ruling. And NC State gets off pretty much scotch-free. I mean, Mark Gottfried gets a 1-year show cause. They got like a $5,000 fine. I think it was a no postseason ban. So I'm sitting there thinking, like, I know it's not a perfect apples to apples because Louisville has the whole dynamic of being on probation because of the the Katina Powell scandal when all this happens, to where I still think they probably get hit harder than almost anyone else. But I still think you can say that's probably a good sign that NC State got let off pretty easily, to where maybe I had honestly been kind of expecting almost a 2-year postseason ban, more likely than not. Maybe, and you know more on this than I do, maybe now 1 year might be all you get if you get.
I will say
it's unpredictable, I know, but
I know nothing with IARP.
Yeah, but I think seeing NC State get that as their punishment, again, you have to qualify that with Louisville being on probation, but NC State getting that, I think, qualifies as good news potentially for Louisville, right?
Yeah. There's no other way to interpret it. I mean, I still think when you throw in probation, and you throw in now the stuff that has been added to the notice of allegations with the Dino Gaudio stuff, I think Louisville is in a far more precarious position than NC State. But if your starting point is what NC State got as its punishment for a $40,000 payment to Dennis Smith Jr. To make sure that he went to NC State, and in the eye side of things, the most we're talking about from a Louisville standpoint was a couple of like $1,000 cash payments that may or may not have even happened.
NC State had 5 level 1 violations in Louisville.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I think if they go the route of persistent offenders, which I know Louisville fans that would perturb them, But I think that is a real possibility. If they go that route, I think they could get hit pretty hard. But if they go the route of like the actual level 1 stuff in here is not as bad as it was originally portrayed to be. But there's a bunch of level 2 and level 3s. Yeah, maybe we just see scholarship reductions and fines, and maybe it's just one postseason ban. I don't know. Maybe there's not one. We'll see. But the IARP certainly, they're trying to figure that one out.
Would like to know what it is.
Yes.
I mean,
it's like discovering that Santa Claus existed. Like they actually showed up and made a ruling. So we'll take it. All right. Category number 2, Jack. I'll let you answer this one first. Which other I narrowed it down to just ACC players. Which ACC player would you most want to see on this Louisville team to make them better? And I'm going to offer up a caveat.
I apologize in advance. I'm breaking the caveat.
Oh, okay.
I'm not
going to say Paolo Banchero?
I'm not going Paolo Banchero.
Ruining the podcast.
Yeah, okay. I'm not being that obvious, but
okay.
But I am going to say Buddy Boeheim, which is ironic.
Interesting. Okay.
Because I'm not really a huge Buddy Boeheim guy, but I think Louisville, as much as they need guys that can attack the basket and all those things, I think just having someone that you can count on every single game to just hit jump shots would be something that would help solve a major issue from this team. And he actually can create his own shot a little bit as well. So for me, one guy in what is not as good of an ACC as we're used to, as we hit on earlier, I'll take Buddy Boeheim. Obviously, if we're taking anyone, it would be Banchero, but I didn't full on break the caveat there for
okay.
you.
All right.
I didn't go full. Yes, on it.
Yeah, I would have been disappointed in you if you full on broke it, but
no.
And I would have made you pick a different.
As you should have. And I figure Boeheim's a fine compliment because he's probably going to be first team All ACC, but I mean, is he really in a normal ACC or first team All ACC? No.
I had preseason magazine stuff this past summer, and the people who come up with these lists and they send it out and they say, hey, we want your editing thoughts on this. And I mean, Buddy Boeheim was in like the top 10 players in the country on one list. And I'm like, no,
what are we doing, guys?
No, he's a fine player. I have nothing against Buddy Boeheim. He's a fine
he's
player.
The type of player that you should be putting for a segment like this.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, he is exactly right. I had 2, and I'm gonna. You mentioning Syracuse made me think maybe Cole Swider.
That'd be interesting
because he's a guy who you can play at the 4, who can make plays for his teammates. He's had a couple of games where he's had I think 5-6 assists. He can make threes. He's scoring and he's rebounding at a high rate. And I think as long as Jae'Lyn Withers and Sam Williamson are struggling the way they are, you've got to have someone who can do that. I mean, Matt Cross has been a nice player for Louisville. Dre Davis has had a good season so far, but they are really both small forwards, and they're not going to be guys who on most nights are going to potentially get you 18 and 10. They might get you 18 and 5, but they're not going to get you 18 and 10. Cole Swider can get you 18 and 10, 18 and 12 on some of these nights, which he has done with Syracuse. The original answer was a guy who I had heard wanted to go to Louisville, or at least was very interested in going to Louisville, and that's Blake Wesley at Notre Dame, who is a guy who can play a number of different positions across your backcourt and wings. Has shown a real athleticism getting into the lane, but he can also knock down jumpers, and has been a really nice early season not surprised, because obviously they recruited him and thought he'd be good at Notre Dame, but a guy who has played well for them, who I think would have been a nice fit for Louisville. Last one then, Jack, because I have not decided yet, but I'm kind of leaning towards we probably won't do a podcast next week. The holidays, my parents will be in town. I may just not do one next week, especially if the Wake Forest game is canceled. There's no reason to do one. So I want to get your New Year's resolution. I want you to go to another land, where another dimension where Jack Grossman stops being Jack Grossman and starts being an inanimate object, which is the Louisville basketball program. You are Louisville men's basketball. What is your New Year's resolution?
All right, so you know how, and I have a lot of experience with this because I've been very bad at dieting over the years, but you know how it's like August or September and you say, I'm going to start dieting. And then you don't. And
Yes.
you do it for like a week and then you don't. And then New Year's picks up and then you decide to try again.
Yep.
I'm going to say that's Louisville basketball with trying to attack the basket and get paint touches. After the ball game, Chris Mack harped on it a bunch, said we need to get the ball in the paint on every possession. And against Southeast Louisiana, Louisville did that. But, after that first week of the diet, you realize, this is kind of difficult. You see that that's sitting off to the side, that chocolate chip cookie that you just can't say no to. And I've been there many times. But
I love it. I love a chocolate chip cookie.
Yes, and that chocolate chip cookie is the 3-point shot off of one pass against the zone. That's what the chocolate chip cookie is for Louisville basketball right now. So the new year comes, you get to rededicate of ridding your house of the chocolate chip cookie and trying to get a paint touch, attack the basket. I know Louisville doesn't have a lot of guys that are great at it, but I expect to see an invigorated effort starting with the Wake Forest game or whatever the hell Louisville comes back from this pause. That is going to be reinstated. That is going to be a point of emphasis. And we're going to see Chris Mack harp on that again and again and again and again in terms of the New Year's resolution of getting back on the exercise bike, starting that diet again, and getting those damn paint touches.
Wow. Okay. That's a good answer. I had 2 written down and that was a variation of one of them. I will stop falling in love with a 3-pointer. So we'll combine that for yours. That's good. My Louisville New Year's resolution is I will embrace the chaos of my team's playing style, controlled chaos, and press for 70% of the game. Because think about when Louisville has looked best this season since Chris Mack has come back. It's when they were pressing the ball and pressuring, picking up full court at times, getting turnovers. The run that they made against Western Kentucky just reiterated this point that when they can get into some passing lanes, cause some problems. I know Chris Mack from a defensive coaching standpoint, the concept of someone getting an easy basket on you like keeps him up at night. Like that's the entire basis of the pack line defense and the defensive rebounding practices that they have in place is they do not want anyone to score easily on them on any possession. Well, I'm here to say, gotta let that go. The team that you have built right now is not built to play that way. And they've got to be able to figure out ways to connect what they're trying to do on offense with with their capability on defense. And while I think that they've had a lot of games where they have played really good defense, don't get me wrong, but take the elements of that, stick with that when the press has not created a turnover and you can still stop the ball in kind of the forecourt area and you can settle your defense. But you've got to try to create more turnovers and more breakouts and more opportunities for your team to score some easier buckets because they cannot get into the lane. There's no Carlik Jones to do that for you. If he was on this team, I feel like Louisville would be in such better shape. But he's not. And that's the bottom line is you don't have guys who can break people down off the dribble. So instead, get some turnovers in situations where you can get 3-on-2s, and get some downhill plays around the basket, get some layups, and get your easy buckets that way instead of trying to do it in the half court. So that's my New Year's resolution